Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lindsay from Flourishing Mama, and I'm really excited that you're here for week 3 of our Proverbs 31 Bible study. This week we're moving on into verses 13 and 14, and this is where we're going to really start getting into the nitty-gritty of the virtuous woman and the character traits and qualities that she wants to have. We talked last week out of verse 11 and 12. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. So we're going to continue in that thought a little bit this week as we move on into verses 13 and 14, which say, She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. And these things can seem a little bit confusing when we first look at them, because in our modern day, you and I aren't seeking wool and flax, and we don't have to go down to the shipyard and get all of our things off of the merchant ships. But these things do apply to us when we look at them in context and apply them in our lives. The first thing we see from these verses, and that we will see as we continue to move on through the chapter, is that a virtuous woman is not idle. She is always industrious, and she is always finding something to do. And in our modern times, that is sometimes difficult because we do have a lot of modern conveniences that do save us a lot of time. But there is an old saying that says, idle hands are the devil's playground. And that is true. When we don't have things to do, we can easily get ourselves into trouble. I read in Matthew Henry's commentaries, I was studying about this chapter. He said, when we have nothing to do, the devil will give us something to do. And that's true, because a lot of times when you are bored, that's something we tell our kids, you're not bored, go find something to do. But then we find ourselves being a little bit bored, and we open up our phones. At least I do. Open up my phone and start scrolling social media. And there's not anything wrong with that as long as you keep it within your boundaries and have your context and, set your time limits and whatever. There is nothing wrong with that. But when we allow ourselves to constantly be doing those kind of things, the devil can use that. There are so many marriages, so many people who fall prey to someone on social media, and then little secret conversations start to happen, and then a family is destroyed, a marriage breaks up. And that is the devil's goal. As we talked about last week, he hates our families and he hates our marriages, and he will do anything that he can to destroy those. But when we are busy, when we are working, when we're serving the Lord, when we're serving our families, the devil has less of an opportunity to use those things in our lives. So what do these verses actually mean? First of all, we see, continuing on in the thought, that her husband trusts her. He's not worried about what she's doing behind his back. He trusts that she is taking care of things in their home. He knows that when he gets home, there's going to be dinner, or she's going to have a plan for dinner. He doesn't worry that he's not going to have clean clothes in his drawer. He's not worried that there's not going to be any money in the checking account for the bills to be paid. And I'm not saying that your life will always be perfect, that dinner will always be on the table, that the kids will always be clean, all of those things. Life happens. But as a wife, as this virtuous woman, part of our job is to do these things, and our husband trusts and he knows that we are going to do these things and take care of his needs. So we see that the virtuous woman applies herself to her business. And now I know there are a lot of moms who have side hustles, or they work jobs, or maybe even you do work a job. But in this instance, this virtuous woman, her home is like a business to her. She runs it with wisdom, and she's not applying herself to something else. When she is in her home, she is applying herself to her home and taking care of her home and the needs of her family. So the verse says that she seeks wool and flax. So that just means that she is prepared for whatever happens. She knows winter's coming soon, so the kids are going to need winter coats. And so she starts, to plan for those things. She is looking ahead to the future. Maybe she's finding the best deals on something or whatever it may be. She always has the future in mind, and she is prepared for that. She has, when it comes to wool and flax, those would have been quality products back in this time. So the virtuous woman knows what is best, she knows what her family needs, and she does what she can to procure it. But as a virtuous woman, as someone who is taking care of her home like a business, she knows how to get the best deal, or she knows where to go to get the best product. Whatever it is, she studies out and she approaches it like a business that she is doing because she cares for her home and her family. We also see that she works willingly with her hands. She's not complaining. She's not upset that she's doing this work. She does it because she loves her husband and her family. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you love housework. There are parts of housework that I do not enjoy, but I do them because I know that I love my family enough to do those things for them. I know that my husband is not going to be happy if he comes home from work and has to trip over all of the shoes coming in our door. For us, that's a huge issue. We leave our shoes in front of the door and it annoys him. And so I try to see that I get them picked up just because I know that that's an annoyance to him. And you probably know there are things in your house maybe that you struggle with. Maybe you don't like laundry and you always have a pile of laundry or a basket of laundry. Guilty of that too. But when we are a virtuous woman and we are approaching taking care of our home as taking care of our business, and not just as a business, but as our ministry for the Lord. This is our calling. This is what we are doing in service to Him. And when we approach it in that way, we can do it with joy in our hearts, knowing that what I am doing right now, as I'm folding this laundry, as I'm preparing this meal, as I'm cleaning this floor, as I'm putting away these shoes, I'm doing it because I love the Lord, because I love my husband, and because I love my family. And because that is what the man who searches for a virtuous woman to be his wife, those are characteristics that he wants and that he seeks for and that he desires in a wife. In verse 14, it says, "She is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar." And that basically means she plans ahead. She knows what is coming in the future and she prepares for it. If Christmas is coming, then she's not going out on December 23rd and trying to buy all the presents. She's doing it ahead of time. She is prepared. If there's a family at church who needs something, she is prepared to serve them, maybe invite someone to her home for a meal. Maybe her husband calls and says, "Hey, I've invited so-and-so over for dinner tonight and I forgot to tell you." She is prepared for those things. And she knows what she needs and she gets it the best way that she can. There were a few years ago when I did go to Walmart the day before Thanksgiving, and it was crazy. There were people everywhere, and there were a lot of things that you couldn't get. You couldn't get your turkey the day before Thanksgiving, but a virtuous woman sees those things coming far down the road, and she is prepared. She knows what she needs, and she is ready when the situation comes. And there are a lot of times in life when that applies. And we as women, one thing that I have learned from my husband, they don't see things the way that we do. They don't plan for things the way that we do. And so that is one reason why God gave us to them, to be the planner, to be the helper, to have their home ready. So this week, as we move on, I want to encourage you with a prayer. But before I give you this prayer, I wanted to share a funny story about myself. Because a while back, I pulled a shirt out of the closet and I asked my husband why he hadn't worn that shirt, because it was a shirt that I really liked on him. And he said that it had a button that had come off and I had sewed the button back on. And I don't know how, but I sewed the button on the inside of the shirt. And he didn't have the heart to tell me. And so here, I didn't know why he hadn't worn the shirt. and he hadn't worn the shirt because I didn't realize that I had made that mistake. So, and I say that to say, as we pray this week, pray that God will help you to notice the needs of your family. Notice if you have a child who is maybe struggling with something and needs your help. Notice if your husband is having a bad day and maybe needs some encouragement. Notice little things that maybe you haven't done for a while around your house. Maybe it's time to clean those windows or scrub the baseboards or whatever it is. Pray this week that God will help you to notice the needs of your family and to serve them joyfully. And that is the key. One of my favorite verses in the Bible says, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." So as you have the joy of the Lord in your heart, you will have strength to do these things that you need to do. And it's a give and take situation. The more joy that you have, the more joy you can apply, the more things you can get done, the more content you will be, and then your life will continue to get better. Your attitude, maybe not your life situations don't always change, but you can pursue things with joy. Pray for yourself to see your home as your ministry, as the calling that God has given to you. Pray that God will help you to be this virtuous woman who seeks to please her husband, who seeks to serve her husband and make her husband happy. Now, this chapter is about how we as women can serve our husbands in a virtuous way. But when we get to the end, we will see there is a reward. So when you're going through this chapter, as you're listening to these lessons, as you're reading these verses, and don't start to get discouraged thinking, there's no way that I can do these things. I can't put forth this effort. What's in this for me? Because that is a lot of times what we think. What is in this for me? You can skip ahead and read if you want, or you can wait a couple weeks, and when we get down to the end, you will see the innumerable blessings and the future that comes for this woman who's a virtuous woman. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you want to see the other lessons in this series, there is a playlist on my YouTube channel called Proverbs 31. You can go there and see them all, and I will see you next week.